Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Swing Kids, a Korean war comedy drama from 2018. Now the opening narration sets up the premise. This takes place in the 1950s. Now during the Korean War, around 140,000 prisoners of war from North Korea and China were housed at a massive scale POW camp in the southernmost part of the peninsula to isolate the prisoners. The American Army took a major role in running this camp. Now, under the Geneva Convention, that puts POW human rights on the forefront, these prisoners of war were guaranteed some free time, such as vocational education and leisure time. And during this process, a number of the North Korean prisoners decided to turn against their home country because they wanted to stay in the South after the war ended. However, violent communist prisoners, again within the camp, who were still loyal to the North, took action against these anti-communist prisoners. So with this, they engaged in some violent activities within this POW camp. As the situation got worse, the U.S. Army tried to repress these communist POWs through violence of their own, and that created a pretty bad PR issue, public relations issue internationally. It drew stark criticism from the international community, going so far as to get the commander of the prison ousted. He got fired. So this film officially begins with some American Army dudes at this camp who are discussing options on how to make the POW camp look better to the international community. So they decide to implement some various fun activities and for the prisoners to engage in to make themselves look good. Now enter our main characters, who are a hodgepodge of different backgrounds and countries of origin, who come together in response to their mutual interest, tap dancing. So they basically form a tap dancing club, I guess you could call it. So needless to say, Swing Kids has a very odd and unique premise. It takes place at a prisoner of war camp during the Korean War, but this place is completely unfamiliar to an American like myself, at least from reviewing or watching prior films. And when I think of POW camps in movies, I think of the ones that are showcased in pro-American films, like the Chuck Norris Missing in Action franchise or the Rambo sequels. POWs are supposed to be malnourished, consistently submerged in disgusting swamp water, and subjected to constant psychological and physical abuse and torture. This is what I think of when I think of a POW camp in a movie. Now, the POW camp in Swing Kids is basically like high school. It's basically what it is. The characters are simply in the same location against their will, but they just have to deal with one another for a while. If they casted young actors in these roles for some reason and just tweaked the script, it could have easily been a typical high school comedy where a bunch of lovable misfits are recruited into a tap dancing club. This is very different, but also pretty interesting because you have a range of cultural and ideological differences at play between these characters. There's a black American soldier who's the leader, and he tries to teach these POWs tap dancing. There's a Korean communist prisoner, a Korean anti-communist prisoner, a Chinese dude, and then a Korean girl who recently arrived at the camp to entertain the soldiers. And then there's some Caucasian American soldiers who cause problems for our protagonists along the way. So there is a ton of cultural content to mine from this scenario. And Swing Kids does a good job of exploring those issues with some interesting and fun interaction. Now, for example, at one point, we see a potentially nasty scene involving bullying. Some of the American soldiers, are trying to come down hard on some of these POWs. So they confront our tap dancing protagonists, and it appears that things are going to get pretty ugly here. But instead, the Americans challenge them to a dancing contest, on the spot. Now, this scene encapsulates everything that is interesting about this movie, and there's a bit of violence in that scene as well. But the way that it blends everything together, like the tones and the genres, is quite good in that particular scene. It has balance, and it doesn't go too far in any one direction. However, a problem arises in cases where Swing Kids does a poor job of blending its tones, and that does happen at times during this film, mostly during the second half. Now, no spoilers, of course, but I just want to give you an idea. of how this film plays out. Now, I'm the last one to complain about tonal shifts in films. If you follow this channel at all, you'll know that I love tonal shifts in films in general. Even if they're not executed properly or to the best extent, I think they're interesting. But there are times where I feel like it's unnecessary and actually a detriment to the film. Now, there's a character in Swing Kids who comes into the film near the midpoint. I should probably call this guy Buzzkill, because the comedic aspects abruptly ramp down when he arrives, and the movie becomes far more serious and violent at the drop of a hat. Now, this is a major tonal shift in Swing Kids, but the script, in my opinion, really did not earn it. Usually when I see a tonal shift in the film, my reaction is, that's pretty interesting. I'm not sure I buy it yet, but it's pretty interesting. When I saw this particular tonal shift in Swing Kids, the specific one I'm talking about, my reaction was, what? Wait. What is this? What is this? You know what I mean? It was basically like Season 8 of Game of Thrones. Wait, what? You know what I mean? It was that kind of reaction. So the fact that Swing Kids fails to execute its major tonal shift does cause some problems, because the story progresses further, of course, after that, and it feels like the dancing no longer belongs in the film after that point. Anytime dancing shows up again during the later portions of the film, it kind of feels out of place and kind of shoehorned in. The ultimate conflict that they decided to go with is probably kind of like the least interesting thing they could have done with the second half of the movie. It's, again, there is some edgy stuff that you want to explore in this movie, and it's presented in that bullying scene that I mentioned during the first half. There's cultural differences, there's national ideologies, and racism that are all present in that scene. It's all in there, but it's blended together and executed very well. I would have liked to have seen more scenes like that during the second half, instead of where it ultimately went. But that's my main gripe with this film. There's a lot of good stuff that makes this worth a watch. The comedy works really well, and for the most part, and the dance scenes are fun. The camera work and the editing are also really good in this. It's very energetic stuff in the way it's presented. The camera moves a lot, and it's very smooth. There's tracking shots and zooms, and it redirects in stylish ways. It's really fun. There's a scene where a person is trying to sleep, but he can't because he's still thinking of tap dancing, and just the way the scene is shot and edited is really cool, and they use tap dancing sounds to supplement his tap dancing fever that he's going through, I guess. And that's one example of what this film does best. There's also a scene with the same character dancing towards the camera, and the environments around him change as he's doing his dance, which was pretty cool. It's good stuff. Now, this film was directed by a man named Kyung-soo, who previously directed Scandal Makers from 2008, which was actually a very good film, Sunny from 2011, which was very good, and Taza, The Hidden Card from 2014, which was pretty good. So this is another one of those, talented Korean directors that goes under the radar of most Western film fans. So I'm definitely interested in seeing what he does next. But overall, I did enjoy Swing Kids. Just be prepared for some pretty crazy tonal shifts. It's currently available on Blu-ray in the United States, and as always, I'll see you next time.